The top five and the rest that were there are on the board. So they are, one, to build a conceptual framework. And so I would look at that one as one of looking at the way we do things in terms of getting our message across. And so that was about the message and the way we do that, and we're highlighting the importance of building a strong conceptual framework for what we do. Okay? And that can cut across the board. Second one is establishing a culture of openness and transparency. And so now the work that has to be done is what do we need to do to establish this a culture of openness and responsibility. Third was make responsible conduct of science a part of the living academic culture. As we talk about cutting across the university, not just in the sciences, but across the entire university, how do we have a conversation about responsible conduct of science that cuts across all of that. Fourth, establish shared values on responsible science through communication. Again, we're talking about effective methods of having a conversation about responsible conduct of science, and we're focusing there on how we communicate that and the way we talk to each other to get people to buy in. And then lastly, sustainability of the responsible community
of science.
Okay. Now, before we go any further, do you have a comfort level with where we are in terms of what you heard yesterday?
Can I answer?
Sure, you can.
Right. My questions are to all the facilitators. Now, NAS, have been traveling around the world conducting such workshops, and I strongly believe that the list there changes depending on which country you go and which university you go. You happen to be here, which is a research university. We have policies being set up pertaining to research, pertaining to ethics, pertaining to publication, supervision, and what have you. So, therefore, based on experience traveling around the country, is it true that this will change depending on the status of the country, where the university is and whatnot? Because I see that if you would conduct this workshop in a less developed country, the values will all be different.
Okay.
I mean, just my hypothesis.
Let me ask a question. Do you want a list of things to do that are based upon our experience as we move around the world? Or do you want a list of things that you want to do based upon your knowledge of the local situation, where you are, and where you're trying to get? Because I'm going to argue that my goal is to have a discussion which allows you to decide what is it that you think you need, and to share and agree upon an approach that you think will get you to where you want to be, where you is the university, not where we want you to be. Because in the final analysis, if this is going to make a difference, you have to own it. Because if you don't own it, there will always be something else which will have a higher priority and will get your attention on that day. If you don't own it, it will always be on the to-do list, or you will always be trying to develop the round to it, that is getting around to it. Okay? So, I haven't answered your question, but then I try to never answer a question, except to ask you one that drives you to where you really need to be. Now, that would be my response. But you didn't ask me, you asked all of us. So I would turn to my colleagues and say, do any of you have anything else you want to add?
Well, we can answer the question.
Okay.
So I think that these are pretty much universal needs. There are countries that are less developed than others, and therefore they have to start from if you want, I don't know, can I use the word lower level of quality of research? Maybe we can say that. But the scientists that we see and with whom we communicate and with whom we collaborate in all these projects, they have the same kinds of values that they need to see in their own country. Some countries are more progressed, others are not, but the need for openness and the need for accountability and the need for having a culture of responsibility is something we see everywhere. It's not, these are not surprise to any of us. I mean, we've seen them come over and over again, and I think, even people in the US would come up with the same kinds of things, or hopefully would, even though we have, like you say, many committees and many policies and many guidelines and many this and many that, and we still have issues and problems with the way we practice science. I don't know, anybody else?
I would say that the list is pretty universal, as Lita said. I think depending upon where you go, the order in which they appear may be a little bit different. So there are some places that we've been where they've never really heard anything about active learning before, and so that was the thing that they were really focusing on. In other places, the whole issue, as you're talking about, the parts of responsible conduct of science, because your university is already along that path, and what we're trying, so you're recognizing those things as important to you. But I would say that all 5 of these things, with minor variations, are the things that we see all the time.
Every journey starts from where you are. I can almost say that's true. Liz?
And I think that if we were to break up into divisions or departments or schools within the university, the list would be similar, but the priorities would be different.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Because it's the culture of the people in the moment interpreting the broader questions that I agree with Lita. We've seen this, and I've seen this in other work that I've done, this question of how do we even define the common values of science? That can be a challenge that starts the conversation that leads to transparency and sustainability. And it's not a journey with a final destination. It's a journey that keeps going.
Well, here's what I want to look at what has happened here. With the exception of the last one, which is not there, every single one of these starts with a measurable objective. Every single one of them. Except for the last one, which we have to put that word in there to what you mean by that. But in every one of these, having this here, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Build a conceptual framework. What blueprint are you going to use? What's the material you're going to use to build it? There are still lots of questions that need to be answered that need to go on from here. And so what I want to do now is that now that we've got the list, I'm going to stop. And what we're going to do is to give you a living example of the challenges and opportunities and success that one member of your group had after going through a version of the exercise that she went through. Once she does that, and so now I tell you that. All right. Once she does that, equipped with the real world example of what it was that she faced, and she will talk about the struggles along the way, I'm sure, the way she had to get this thing done. And then what we're going to do is come back, equipped with the theory, the practice of what she did, a practice. And then we're going to have a discussion about where do we go from here? What do you do tomorrow morning when you wake up? And you start thinking about how you want to get to that place where you want this university, this department, you pick your unit, and I always say, you pick the bite size that allows you to get somewhere, not the one that will get you. John? First, take a break. We're going to take a break
10 minutes.
while she gets set up,
10 minutes.
10 minutes, and then we'll come back